the biggest myth and the most destructive myth that I've experienced and I've seen other people experience is this idea that you just have to keep trying to do things the quote unquote traditional way.
"83% of Americans identify as not very happy, which can hold you back and negatively affect your relationships and your business. On this podcast, we discuss the proven steps to happiness so you can restore balance and rekindle your joy."
Welcome back to another episode of How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs. Whether you're an entrepreneur or you're just a human being, today's episode is going to be so very helpful. This podcast, if you're new, is for people that are ready to stop chasing someone else's version of success and what's right and start tuning inside so that they can build a life that actually aligns and works for you. So I'm your host, Yvonne Trost, Chief Happiness Officer at Limitless You. And today's episode is for anyone who has felt like their brain just doesn't quite fit the mold that somebody's trying to put it into. Our guest, Skye Waterson, is a former academic turned ADHD business strategist. After being diagnosed during her PhD, she made it her mission to help overwhelmed entrepreneurs create businesses that match their minds, not the other way around. She is the founder of Unconventional Organization, a coach to over 800 ADHD professionals, and host of the ADHD Skills Lab podcast, which just hit 100 episodes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Skye, welcome to the show. I'm so excited for you to tell your story and share your wisdom. I think a lot of people will be able to relate, whether or not they've been diagnosed or not diagnosed with ADHD. We all have moments where perhaps our minds think a little bit differently and we're taught or conditioned to believe that something's wrong with us when actually it's not. So you're here to show us how ADHD or just thinking differently can be your edge, not your obstacle, and how to build systems that actually stick. Does that sound good?
That sounds exactly good. That sounds great. That sounds like exactly what I do.
Okay, perfect. So I want to hop right into it. We have a very huge audience and one that's very busy, and we get right to the punchline. So if you're listening, maybe you know you have ADHD, maybe you don't, maybe you just feel overwhelmed, scattered, or stuck. So, Skye, if someone doesn't know that they need to be listening to this, right? Or they're not sure if you're going to be able to help or give them tips or tricks, I want you just to connect with them for a minute. What are some common signs that your brain might just be wired differently? And I'm sure you have a list of things. Can you also tell it in a way that is experience led? So how did you discover what was going on and how did it shift your path?
Yeah. And I think this is important because so many times you'll have a list, but it's made for a psychiatrist to review. It's not necessarily for you and your life. And I will say, generally speaking, I work with people who have executive functioning difficulties. So ADHD is the most common reason for this. There might be other reasons that you have an unconventional brain, but essentially it's this concept, at least for me, it was the sense that I was really led by my struggles with dopamine. I was struggling with the, traditional job space, things that you're like, oh, well, it's going to be great because you're going to work really hard all week and then the weekend's going to be a reward. And my brain was like, this does not feel good. I need something a little bit more stimulating. And then, other pieces like estimating time, I was terrible at, and, still struggle with, but now I have the strategies for estimating how long something would take, estimating how long I would be able to do it for. I would burn out very regularly because I'd be like, I could take on 3 jobs and finish a master's thesis at the same time and work contractually with 3 different universities. That's totally reasonable. And I think I could do it all in about a month, so all of those struggles as well. And having that happen consistently at work, at home, across time. And then just working memory struggles. If someone said to me, hey, could you just make sure that you send this to me? And I was like, on it. And then I was not on it. I 100% would forget to write that down. I would forget to tell people. This really, came up when you're working with government institutions, like you're doing ethics applications, and they're like, well, you have to fill out point A, B, C, D, E, F, G in these particular ways. And you're immediately going, oh my gosh, like, I don't know if this is worth it. Because again, working with those working memory struggles, which basically means it's hard to remember things that are happening today when they come at you, and not being able to implement the strategies, not knowing that there are strategies available to manage that. And for business owners as well, like people who are, maybe a boss, sometimes we don't talk about these spaces, but it can look like having a team and then having the team being like, okay, well, you were super motivated on Friday and we were doing this, and now it's Monday and you have a new plan and you've read a new book and we have a new system that we're doing. So what's going on? And it can not just affect you, but as you grow and as you build things, it can affect the people around you as well.
Absolutely. And I want to pull the thread on that. I have my son who's 14 that's diagnosed with ADHD. I don't love labels. I do understand that there are challenges. I think people are averse to labels. They're averse to like being vulnerable. They're averse to saying, I'm different, because of the work we do at Limitless You, right? We know that people seek connection, they seek acceptance, and human beings seek to be a part of a tribe so that they can feel safe and protected, whether they're aware of it or not. And when you admit or when you operate in a different way, it can feel very unsafe. And so I want to talk about, how do you create safety, not in trying to fit somebody else's mold, but in safety in your authenticity and doing what you feel drawn to do. Like the world is not made, a lot of the world is not made unless you're an entrepreneur, and then you can have your own schedule and everything, which is great. But to your point, I know a lot of entrepreneurs that they go into it for freedom, but then they have people and they're like, I got this idea. And then next minute it's like, I got that idea. And then I got that idea. And the people that aren't operating like they are like, whoa, can you just pick a direction and can we stick with it? And then because of their ability, other people feel overwhelmed. Yeah. And then they feel like they're failing. So talk to me about how to have powerful conversations as somebody whose mind thinks differently when you're interacting or perhaps even leading people that are different than you. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think, to touch briefly on your community conversation, that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about what I do. The first thing I did when I found out that someone said you should get tested for ADHD was find a community of people, actually make a community of people at the time because it was less known, who I could speak with about this. And nowadays, running a community of entrepreneurs and business owners and leaders who have these kinds of brains is a massive part of having that community. And you don't need to be diagnosed. You just need to know that you resonate with the struggles and you understand, that sense of having an unconventional brain. When it comes to communicating with other people, first of all, if you have a solid basis, you have a community of people who think like you, work in the way you do feel more confident. I always say I can talk about it, forever, and you'll just be like, maybe Skye is like different. But when you hear other people that you value their perspective and you see them as a peer also struggling, it makes massive, massive difference in your confidence. And then when it comes to talking to other people in a workplace situation, it's really up to you. Sometimes people will say, I have, ADHD, and this is why I work like this, and this is what I need, and this is what I need from you. Sometimes people will just be like, this is how I work. A lot of entrepreneurs have ADHD symptoms. When you look at the research, it's very, very, very common. It's one of the reasons that I work in this particular industry, because that's the people who sought me out. It was such a common area. But you don't have to tell people. You can just say, this is how I work best. This is how I work best. This is how I get things done the best. how do you get things done the best? How can I work with you? And you can have that connection about this idea that we just don't all work the same. The biggest myth and the most destructive myth that I've experienced and I've seen other people experience is this idea that you just have to keep trying to do things the quote unquote traditional way.
Right.
Because, that ultimately will generally lead to burnout, a lot of negative self-talk, and just make it take way longer and be a lot harder to do the things you want to do.
Yeah, I want to, oh gosh, there's so many things to talk about. The first is related to that. And then the second, don't let me forget about a conditioned response question I'm going to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
So this is very powerful. I've done this before, and I think it's so often skipped. But having that conversation of you get the best of me when, and you get the worst of me when. And
Mm-hmm.
knowing that there's no judgment. And Skye, you get to also tell me I get the best of you in and I get the worst of you in. And then we're a
Mm-hmm.
team. And then as a team with unique human beings, we need to think about how might we create synergy and how might we accomplish things so that we can leverage each other's strengths and support each other's weaknesses. I come from I'm a new to entrepreneurship. And so for me coming in, I was like very structured and organized and a recovering perfectionist and a control freak and a planner. I was like, whoa, this is very uncomfortable for me. So I think the other thing is also knowing that you can feel safe and vulnerable, like just like you're uncomfortable, somebody that doesn't think like you is also uncomfortable. So
Mm-hmm.
starting with, I always have this little thing called E equals MC squared. It's not Einstein's theory, but it's similar. Is mindful thinking raised to the power of compassion and curiosity. So, Skye, if you have ADHD tendencies and I don't, if we don't connect and have compassion for our uniquenesses and curiosity about each other and how we might work together, we're going to clash. It's not going to work. It's going to be very frustrating. And we're not going to be able to align on an intention or achieve results in a way that feels good. So I love what you're saying about just get curious, like be vulnerable, have compassion. It's okay to be different, right?
Yeah.
It's okay to ask for what you need. Quite often we're thinking, and this is from our childhood conditioning, and then we're going to get to the second point of my question, that it's not acceptable to be different, that you need to be the same. So like I used to work for Accenture and I love the organization. They definitely had psychologists involved. Like they would have 4 or 5 interviews to figure out, okay, how do we get the outwardly looking confident, but inside insecure people that will work and work and work and work. And they're very structured and they're this and they're that. That's the old school. But then as we acquired companies, we didn't mesh the worlds. We didn't have the conversations about the different types of people that were hired, the different cultures. And then there were clashes and then became like Hunger Games and Games of Thrones put together, right? And nobody wants that. So I think the other thing that I want to talk about is how have you helped people, number one, have compassion for themselves, have compassion for others, and have a shared curiosity to align to a shared intention?
Yeah, I think these are really good questions. I think the number one thing I would say is I have helped people deal with the biggest struggles that they have. So I've had the opportunity to work, for example, to your point, in government. I've worked with managers who struggled with ADHD symptoms to help figure out how to do that. A lot of times I hear like, oh, this would be really helpful for everybody. And I'm like, yeah, we all have bad days. It's just that if you have ADHD symptoms, you might need this more often. And so we have systems. Basically, I take people through a program where I help them to focus themselves, actually get momentum on the thing that they need to do, get their time back, because everybody comes to me super overwhelmed with no time. So we help you get about 5 hours of time back. That's the goal that we're looking at, so that you can focus on spending a couple of hours learning these strategies and then spending the rest of the time actually going for it on the things that you want to do. And then ultimately we help you grow consistent revenue, because we don't want it to be energy based. We don't want you to just have revenue when you have that sense of like, oh my God, I can't believe it's December and I have to really go for it. Or it's January, I feel super motivated. We want you to have consistent revenue all the time. And so we teach strategies that I've taught for years now that are based on how the brain works and neuroscience and all those kinds of things. If you're somebody who has an unconventional brain, to help you hit those 3 points. When you can hit those 3 points consistently and you're going in a direction, we talk about setting sail, and sailing your ship to the other side of the shoreline, then you are able to do amazing things. I've seen people, hit amazing goals within the first 30 days, triple their revenue, quit the job that they wanted to quit, like do those things that they wanted to be able to do. And a lot of it comes down to, are you able to focus and grow in a way that works for your brain? And are you able to use these systems rather than consistently trying to do things in a way that doesn't work for you? It's taking a lot of time, a lot of energy. And you just don't have the confidence that it's going to work long term, because it probably won't. It's not built for you.
Yes. And I want a couple things on this. A lot of the reason why people do that, right, they might not be aware of. And if you can get them back to the reason they do it and then see that the very reason they're doing it, they're creating the opposite effect, right? So people try to fit in, they try to be accepted, they try and like be safe and protected and a part of the team. And that's why they try to fit in and just hustle or muscle through it. But then because it's not a fit, they end up creating friction or being pushed away because of the tension. So the very reason you try to fit in, right? The very reason you try to do something that doesn't work for you, you actually create the effect you're trying to avoid. So
exactly.
So you said a couple things, and I think people's ears perked up when you said, I get 5 hours of my time back and my revenue is consistent. So I know that we can't go through your course today, but I do want every time somebody listens to this show to have actionable, valuable things that they can go test out. And then they can go test them out and they'll be like, oh my God, I need more of that Skye business. I'm going to reach out to her. So what gift could you give our listeners today to set them on this journey of 5 hours back and consistent revenue without chaos?
Yeah. Oh, I love this. I'm such an open book. I love giving strategies. So the first thing I'd say is if you go ahead and you just DM me on Instagram at Unconventional Organisation, just message me Limitless. That way I'll know that you've come from here. And we will go ahead and, send you the first thing that we do, which is essentially a prioritization filter, which is to say, how do we get you focused in 2 minutes? How do we take you from, there's a million things I have to do, there's a million fires that I have to put out, to actually being focused in 2 minutes? And then how do we, grow from there to understand what's really important? Because often,
I love that. So let's just repeat that. I put it in the banner here if you're watching, but if you go to Instagram, Unconventional Organization, and that is the British spelling, which I love.
Yes.
ORGANIS, not Z, Asian, right? And DM her the word Limitless. So I'm going to do that after this call for sure. But I wanted to make sure people heard that. Okay, so keep going.
Yeah. So basically, when we talk about this idea of how do we focus, the first thing that we need to understand is that there are a million things that we want to do. We're also, often divergent thinkers, which means we can take an idea and explode it in a million different directions. And we're not very good at bringing it all back down together. So your task list is going to be massive. So the first thing we want to do is we just want to go ahead and take everything out of your brain. So find a document or a journal or somewhere you're going to be able to reuse. And I want you to just take a second and write down every single thing that's in your head, every task, work, home. We don't do categories. That's such a typical traditional way of thinking. It doesn't work for our brains. So everything goes on the list, all the tasks you have to do. And then from there, the first step we want to do is we want to look at that list and we want to say, okay, what needs to be done in the next 24 hours? Or there will be a significant negative external consequence, not just I'll feel bad or I said I would, or it would feel good to do it, because we can talk about that stuff later. The first thing we need to know is just if our day went sideways, for example, if we ended up in a waiting room or something happened, what is the thing we would still be doing on our phones in that moment? Or we'd at least be messaging someone and saying, hey, I don't think I'm going to be available for this tomorrow. The day went sideways and it's not going to be ready. That is urgent. Everything else is not urgent. And that's something I really want you guys to take it through. And I take you through this whole process to help you understand then, okay, well, what's truly important and how do I find the time and how do I do it when I'm super bored and I don't want to, because that happens all the time. But the first thing we want to really understand is that we do so many things. I was writing an article on emails the other day. I found some research. People spend 16 hours processing and organizing their emails in a week. So if you want to know where we get the time from, a lot of it is organizing your life.
I tell people just don't email, like just text me. Like I think people try and communicate and email like a conversation, and that's not what it was designed for. But anyway, I digress. Sorry.
Well, exactly. So we look at your life and we look at what is truly urgent, what you have to do, and then what is truly important. We figure out what your 80-20 is. What is the 20% activity that you're doing that could lead to that 80% return? Usually you're already doing it, but you just haven't locked in. You're also doing this and this and this and this and this side hustle and this idea and this idea. And that focusing that, organizing that, doing it in a way that's natural for your brain is such a big part of getting you that time back, getting you focused, and then growing your revenue, because actually it's in the simplicity that we can do it. But like I said, we have unconventional brains. So we have to work on things like, what if I'm super bored? What if this is really confusing? What if I don't want to do it because I'm going to feel really anxious about it? And we work through all of those things with you as well. It's the how. That's what we work on, not just the what. You guys have a lot of whats. We can find, ChatGPT will tell you what to do. Yeah. But it's the how. How do we implement it?
Yes. And I'll play devil's advocate for a moment. I think that a lot of people that are listening, if they are entrepreneurs, especially if they're solopreneurs or if they're like the solo owner, right? They don't have a partnership. There's a lot of pressure and weight on their shoulders that they feel accountable, responsible. I got to do it all. And there's so many people that are depending upon me, and I just got to push through the chaos, and I got to do this and I got to do that. So Skye, that sounds great, but I have more on my urgent list than you probably think is urgent. And let me tell you why.
Yeah, 100%.
I that again. I'll get that over and over again.
Yeah.
So I know your approach focuses on still, though, whatever, excuses aside, reality aside, whatever you want to believe your reality is, because your reality is always based upon your thoughts and the meaning you give what's outside of you. But if somebody were to tell you that, how do you bring them back to building with their brain, not against it?
Yeah, I love that. First of all, totally understand that. Also running a full business, doing all that kind of stuff. And I work with business owners between, making their first 20K all the way up to running a $10 million business. So I work with people who have unconventional brains in all kinds of businesses. I have never had somebody go through the prioritization filter strategy with me and not end up with more than 5 things that are truly urgent today when we do this. So I've done this hundreds of times, and I can tell you that the chances that you end up with more than 5 things that are truly urgent today are very, very low. So that's the first thing. And honestly, the relief that people see when they see it and they realize what's truly urgent and what's not. It's okay to let a few fires burn. We talk about this all the time. There's different kinds of fires. There's fires that are kitchen fires and there's fires that are bin fires. We want to go ahead and we want to get rid of the kitchen fires, the ones that are going to burn the house down. But we don't necessarily have to get rid of every single fire. If somebody comes to you and they say, hey, our folder structure is really bad and I feel like it's taking a little bit of extra time, that might not be the thing that you want to focus on right now. In fact, one of the things I often say to people is, hey, don't clean your office, because a lot of people will come to me and they'll say, I'm totally going to do it. I'm going to do it. It's going to happen. But Skye, I have to clean my office. If I don't clean my office, I'm not going to get it done. And I tell you what, I've seen people triple their revenue and not clean their office. That is what I will tell you. So this is stuff that we talk about. And in terms of doing it in a way that works for your brain, it's all about how do we let go of what we have to do and focus on what is truly important, and then do it in a way that doesn't feel like every day you're hitting that wall and you're waking up and you're like, right, time to hit that wall, time to push through, time to, do all those things will ultimately lead you closer and closer to burnout or crash out or whatever you want to call it. But not being very motivated and thinking, you know what, I'm just going to shut up shop. This isn't for me. I'm going to go do something else. That is what we're trying to avoid. This is a voluntary activity. If you hate it, you're not going to do it forever.
Absolutely. Oh gosh, there's a couple things that I want to talk about. But on that point, the first one is, so my son, he's starting high school. I have one going into college, one going into high school. Mm-hmm. And he had to decide on this elective and what he wanted to do. And, one has a track that's probably going to be more financially profitable should he explore it. And another one, he just thinks really cool and interesting. Mm-hmm. And the old me, before I got let go of my limiting beliefs, the fear of the unknown, the perfectionism, all the things that I thought I needed to do to be safe, to be accepted, to be loved based upon how I interpreted my environment as a child, right? And I unlocked myself from that. The old me would have been like, okay, you got to do this one because you got to have as many options as possible to make as much money as possible. And you can just do it because I could just do it, right? And so I thought, well, I can push through it. My oldest, he can push through it. Like, I used to just think like, but it was all out of fear. It was all out of fear, not because I didn't want him to be happy, not because I wouldn't want him to love what he's doing, but because I was taught, get a good paying job, be able to pay the bills, have the Facebook family, like all the things, right? Not because my parents didn't love me, but because they wanted better for me than they had. So it's this generational cycle, right? And this time I'm like, well, bud, you got to decide, right? Like, do you think you would be happier doing the thing you like doing and actually doing it, or doing the thing you think you should do that you're just not going to do? Because I am not going to hound you anymore. I'm not going to manage you anymore. I'm not going to, because that's what happens to a lot of children and young adults these days, is parents in all love try and make them do the thing that they think will be most successful in air quotes, right? Money, which they equate to safety. And then you have all these children and young adults with anxiety because they don't believe they can do it, or they're feeling they have to do something they don't want to do, and their body and their mind is fighting them. And so I love what you're saying about this is a voluntary thing, right? There's no right or wrong here. Like, I'm not right. I don't know what's right for Skye. I don't know what's right for my son. I can guide and be a sounding board. But this is, like Skye's saying, this is about like figuring out what's right for you. And then don't force something that's not right.
Yeah.
Because you think you should, or because you think it's going to be safe, because you're not going to end up doing it well anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And what I will say is, if you go to my Instagram, you'll see it says, don't let the smile fool you. We are here to get results. Like, I am very passionate about helping people become successful, but doing it in a way that works for their brain, and successful for a reason. One of the reasons I want you guys to become successful entrepreneurs, to make money, is, first of all, I don't want to just tell you something and have you go away and feel better about your life and have your life be the same. I don't see that personally as a success. I want you to have significant better outcomes. And also because if you are able to get those resources, to your point, then you can use them, and you can give them away, you can support other people, you can get more to support yourself. But if you don't do it in a way that's going to fit your brain and how you work, in terms of how you focus, how you hire a team, how you speak to that team, how you visualize a business model, if that's what you're doing, or your growth in general, then you're not going to do it because it is voluntary. And I think that is something that people don't often realize, is that especially with entrepreneurship, nobody really cares about it until you are successful. I work with a client, for example, and she's a playwright, and she now has gone on to get $200,000 worth of grants towards her work, and she's been able to do it full time. When she started, she was doing this part-time, and there were a limited number of people who really were saying, like, hey, you should be doing this, you should be focusing on this is the thing that you should be doing. It was like, well, maybe it is, maybe it's not, we don't really know yet. And that's the same with what I started, right? When I first started this, it was just me writing articles and putting them on the internet and saying, like, hey, I researched this thing, does anybody want it? And it's you doing those reps at the beginning that makes it into something where now I'm talking on this podcast, and you have your own podcast, and we're building this amazing thing. But you do have to do that groundwork, and that's the hard part. That's the part that nobody sees. And if you also make it so that you have to do it in the traditional way that doesn't fit your brain, it's going to make it doubly difficult.
Yes. And I want to tap on that. I had a conversation with a client today, and the word hustle is very common, at least in the US, around entrepreneurs. And it's a hustle, and it's a season of hustle, and the hustle and the hustle and hustle. So we share the same language, but there might be differences in spelling, but there's also differences in meaning. So when you hustle, but it's not working with your brain, and it's causing you stress, and it actually isn't something you desire, it is actually causing like ongoing stress that people think is their entrepreneurial edge, but it's actually the fast pass to the entrepreneurial grave, even if they make money along the way, because it creates inflammation, it creates dis-ease, it creates disease, it can create cancer. So we're not saying don't be passionate. We're saying if you're going to hustle, do it with desire, do it with flow, do it with like power that is natural for you to use in a way that's natural for you to use. Because then to me, it doesn't necessarily feel like work. It feels like passionate purpose, right?
Yeah.
It feels like passionate desire. And so how do you make or help people that you work with kind of think through, okay, what is the difference between push through hustle and it doesn't fit my brain versus passionate, purposeful action that I feel in flow doing? Does that make sense?
100%. And that is often what we talk about. Like I said, it's about that implementation. How are we going to do this? Like, okay, cool, I want to hit this goal. Like, how do I do it? And there's a lot that we do, but one of them is we look at the research. We look at the research into how our brains work, into how we think, and we make adjustments based on that. So if we think about, one of the things people often say is, okay, Skye, now I understand what I need to do. I've cleared out time in my schedule to do it, but I get there and I just don't want to. It's boring. I don't want to do the thing. And that happens all the time, and that's okay. And, one of the things that I'll teach people is, okay, well, when you look at how the brain works and you look at the research, if you are more of a conventional brain, then your brain will give you a little boost of dopamine, a little thumbs up at the beginning of that task, because it's connecting it to the reward you're going to get at the end. Maybe it's an extrinsic reward, maybe it's an intrinsic reward, which is just to say, maybe it's ice cream and going for a walk, or maybe it's just the feeling of a job well done and the chance to take a break. Either way, you're going to give if you're a conventional brain, you're going to get that little boost. If you're an unconventional brain, you have ADHD symptoms and you struggle with that, your brain, according to the research, is more likely to just go, this is lame and I don't understand why we have to do this, and not give you that boost. So what we do, what we've been teaching for years now and worked with so many different people, is we say, okay, let's give yourself a reward for starting. Let's give yourself something at the beginning. When you sit down with the intention of working, by the way, you guys all already do this, you just don't know about it. It's called coffee. But let's add to that. Let's say, okay, well, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to get some work done, but I'm going to have a coffee. I'm going to have, We think about the five senses. I'm going to sit somewhere nice. I'm going to, watch the sunrise if it's morning. That's what I was doing yesterday. I'm going to have a coffee. I'm going to be comfortable. I'm going to listen to some music or read an article. And then I'm going to write down what I'm going to get done, and then I'm going to do it. You're letting your body flow into it because you understand how your brain works. You're working with your energy, with your brain, and not against it. And that's exactly what we teach and what we do.
I was like, oh my God, did my 14-year-old talk to you? Because he'll like say he's supposed to empty the dishwasher. He goes to do something to like whatever that has not. I'm like, you didn't even start. Like, what are you doing? Like, go into game for 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, so this has taught me, Skye, even in understanding my son, because I'm a get her done well kind of gal.
Oh,
and
yeah?
He's like, oh, well, I'm going to do this, and it might take him 2 weeks. And so I think it's great if whether or not you feel like you have these symptoms, I'm sure whether it's your child or your spouse or your partner or somebody at work, like, listen up, because this is about human connection, and we're all connected anyway. Even if you don't think you are. So just like, even when I talk about like menopause, I'm like, if you know a female, you should listen. If you know another human being whose brain is organized differently, and chances are that you do, even if you don't think you do, just take this in and be like, oh, maybe this is how I could support that person. Or maybe this is a question I can ask. Hey, when do I get the best of you? When do I get the worst of you? And let me share, because I know we're different, and that's okay. Right. So I want you all to have this as an invitation to have compassion and get curious, not only with yourself, but with other people. So I have another question that I think our listeners are going to find very valuable. So let's say we go to your Instagram, Unconventional Organization, with an S, not a Z, and we DM you Limitless, and you send us kind of like that priority thing. And okay, fine. Now I understand. I know what's urgent today. For entrepreneurs, even if they can get that, right, there's a lot of uncertainty. And that's something that I've had to get used to, right? When you're a W-2 and you have a paycheck, and it's just you hustle and you work hard, and then you go home, but you're going to get paid, and you don't have to pay anybody else. For entrepreneurs, it's very different. So even if they can say, okay, well, I know this is all the stuff that needs to get done today, but then I don't know what strategy is going to work. I don't know how the revenue is going to be stable. Like, the environment's changing. Like, what's the next step? Like, once I'm like, okay, fine, I figure out what's urgent today, with all the ideas and things that they're juggling, what's your advice? How do you help people do the next best thing? Does that make sense?
I love that. Yeah, that's actually the very first thing we do. So once we've cleared the space and we say, okay, this is what's urgent, so we can relax. We don't have like these million things to do today like we thought we did. Now we have time. So what are we going to do with that time? The very first thing that we talk about is, what is your 80-20? We've talked about this before. So I actually was teaching about this right before this call. We talk about, what is your long-term vision for yourself, for your life, not just for your business. 25 years from now, where do you want to be? 15 years from now, in the future, where you've done the thing, where are you going? We want to make sure we're setting your course correctly. Do you want to have a $10 million business? Do you want to have a $1 million business? Do you want to travel a lot? Do you want to have a lot of family? These are all the things that we ask people. And then from there, we talk about, okay, well, what constitutes a significant first step towards that goal? Is it, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to be a full-time in this industry? Is it, I'm going to finally hit, my first 6 figures or my first 7 figures in this business? What is the thing that constitutes that significant first step over the next 12 months? And what we're doing is we're building a little bit of a map. If you think about yourself as a ship, you're going in a direction. We want to understand the overall ultimate goal, the shore you're trying to get to, and then the first leg of the journey. So we understand that, and you understand that. And I talk about a ship, not a ladder, because it's not going to be perfect. We're going to go in different directions, but you might sail around some storms, but we are ultimately going in that direction. That's the journey we're on. And then from there, I ask a question, which I ask everybody, and it has been such a massive unlock question for so many people, which is, what is the 20% thing that you could do that would give you an 80% return towards this goal? What is that thing for you? And to do this, we don't just ask you and then you think about it. We look at the data. We look at what's worked in the past. And even for people who haven't had businesses before, they'll often find themselves, well, I did this, and actually this was how I found people. Usually, we break it down into, okay, well, do you want to find, new people? Do you want to, sell to new people? Like, what are we doing? And from there, well, how have we done that in the past? Is it that I had these conversations, I actually went to this workshop, and I sent out these emails, and that was really good, and then I just never did it again. Like, we do that all the time. So once we can understand what is the thing that if you honed out on, if you hit that hammer on the head again and again, that nail, sorry, not the hammer, if you hit it again and again and again, you would be able to build out a really solid vision for your life, and you'd be able to go in a direction. I'll give you an example. I had a client who is an athlete, a professional athlete, gets sponsors, wanted to travel in Europe and race in Europe. Cool goal, amazing goal. What was the thing that she needed to do to get there? Well, she needed to go ahead and actually email sponsors. And often that's the thing, this 80-20 thing is often kind of a mundane activity, which is why we then talk about how to focus, how to get it done. So she emailed sponsors. She learned how to be better at emailing them. She changed her email. She iterated. She built a CRM. She made that happen. And then she went to Europe and traveled because she got the sponsorships that she needed to reach that goal. So often that is the problem. We need to figure out what is the 20% that's actually going to give you the 80%. And we talk about this when you work with me. We'll usually actually have that conversation in person. We'll build out that 30-day goal. That's usually the first thing that we do. But this piece, when it's missing, can lead to so much misdirection and just, driving around in circles, basically.
Absolutely. I love that. And I guess one follow-up question I have for our listeners, because a lot of things are changing and a lot of them are dynamic. And the thing that used to be the 20% to get the 80% might not even exist anymore, or might be replaced by AI, or might, legislation, and now they can't even do whatever the thing was. So for people that start to feel like overwhelmed or helpless or like stuck because the old thing doesn't work and they don't know what the new thing is, like, what's your advice for people to work with their brain and discover the unknown and to stay with it long enough to see if that is going to be the 20% thing, because they don't know yet? Does that make sense?
It does. It's a huge, huge struggle. I mean, I have ADHD. I'm not medicated. I work on this. I use every single strategy that I teach. So these are all very, very real things. You're right. The first thing we say is we just do it for 30 days. We lock you in for 30 days. 30 days of doing something. And, for most people, this is not something that is going to change in that period of a time. Second, we talk business strategy. This is not just about, ADHD systems. It's also about business. So, for example, for a lot of people, the first thing they want to do is they want to get more leads. They want to get more market qualified leads, people who are going to pay them, which is amazing. There's only a couple of ways to do that. You can do paid ads. You can do, earned media. You can do SEO. Those are kind of the main ways to do it. So if you say, okay, well, I want to do, in the next 30 days, I want to increase the number of people who know about me, who are interested in me, who want to work with me. Okay, cool. So which of these three options are we going to do? Okay, you're going to do partnerships. I love partnerships personally. And so, okay, well, what have you done with partnerships before? And then we build that system out. And then for people who maybe say, oh, well, I tried to do this for like 2 weeks and it didn't work at all, then maybe we make an adjustment. But usually what we're doing is we're going deeper. We're not switching. So if you said you wanted to do partnerships for 30 days to grow your lead flow, we're not suddenly going to switch in 2 weeks over to paid ads. We're going to go deeper. And for so many people, that is where you see the difference. You're not going to get the response immediately. And it's that sense of, I think, I know a lot of people who talk about this idea of, you learn what you don't know, and then it's really tempting to just go and learn what you don't know in a different sphere. And actually, it's when you stop and you stay in it that you're able to actually get the results that you want. But you have ADHD, so that's really hard, which is why you're part of a community of people who are also doing it, and you have all the accountability and support and everything like that.
Yes, and I love some of the things that you're saying. I think relate to anybody that's listening. We as human beings make emotionally driven decisions, but usually our emotions are as a result of sensations in our body or feelings that aren't fact-based, and they're conditioned based upon something that happened to us a long, long, long time ago. So I love how data-driven your help. I think that's a huge tool for anybody. Like start with your intuition, start with your desire, start with what you want to set your course. And then as you're iterating for feedback, actually look at data, not just your mood or the feeling or the sensation, because that can lie to you unintentionally, trying to protect you, right? Or trying to create that dopamine hit. But I love what you're saying is like, set the course, at least for a specific time period, and then be data informed.
Yeah. And it can lie to you, it will. It's really scary doing something new. It's one of the reasons I love doing it as part of a community. And you're going to be bored and you're going to be tired and people aren't going to respond to your messages and that's going to suck. And so you want to be a part of a group of people who are like, yeah, that happened to me. That's totally fine. And actually, then I got here and I did this. And those things I think are so valuable when you're working together. We can give you the strategies, but doing them alone, I wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, you don't have to do anything alone. I have here, you can reach out to Skye on Instagram, Unconventional Organization with an S. Or if you're like, I don't know what's blocking me and I don't know why I keep self-sabotaging, even, in partnership with working with Skye, reach out to me. It's a free session to figure out what might be blocking you, stuck in your subconscious. You're not even aware because it seems normal. It's been normalized at unlocklimitlessyou.com/call. So, Skye, I want to ask you one more thing with a few minutes that we have left. We could go on and on and on. And it's related, but yet seems a slight step to the right. But I think it's an important question. And it's this whole thing around labeling and ADHD. And I don't want to be labeled. And, kind of the pros and cons. And I just want people, I almost want just like, we should all have some million different classifications. There's just some that have been focused on and some that haven't because they're common. We're all unique human beings. I want to focus on compassion and curiosity, no matter what your challenge is or thing that diversifies you from another. What is your message for anyone that's listening who feels embarrassed or feels adamant about not being labeled? Or how can you free them from anything that's kind of low vibration as somebody that is going through this and take it up high vibration, and that help them understand that we're all unique human beings and they have gifts and their gifts just might be different than others?
Yeah. I think it's really interesting. I mean, the first thing I'll say is, again, I do not expect or ask people to get diagnosed. It's a whole journey. It's a different process. In terms of identifying yourself and saying, I think I just think differently. I think I do. And I think I always have. That conversation, it's more about just stepping out and doing one thing a little bit differently. So maybe you say, okay, well, I'm gonna download this thing. I'm gonna try this focus system. Let's see if it works. Why not? The thing I always say to people when they come and work with me is, are you committed to experimenting? Are you committed to trying and saying, hey, this worked, this didn't work, and then adjusting from there? If you're committed to that, you can go on the journey of trying to do things in a slightly different way. And if it feels good for you, then just keep going. There's no rules that say like, that means you're this now, and that means you have to do that now. Like, that's not the case. I work with so many A lot of my clients are in their 40s and 50s and they run businesses and they're like, I'm not saying nothing. And then sometimes they do. Like I've had amazing clients like, Lisa from Google and Jacqueline, who's a chemistry professor. You become more comfortable over time and you share your story and you feel better about it. So I would say just start the journey and think of it like a journey. You don't have to decide what you are right now.
Yeah. And you don't have to feel right or wrong. I love what you're saying about community and vulnerability. We at Limitless You have a tribe. I call it my tribe, but it's a group of individuals that have decided to get unlocked and they want to rewire and they want to continue to rewrite their past, their present, and their future. And that support and talking about it, to realizing you're not alone, to realizing people can be different and still supportive. Community is so powerful. So Skye, thank you so much for bringing your heart, your brilliance, your honesty to this conversation. You've shown us that we don't need to be more disciplined. We need to be more in tune. As I like to say, attuned. The most important relationship anybody can have is the one with themselves. And through our conversation today, I hope that people have connected more to themselves and they see that there are people that care. There are strategies out there. And what's normal doesn't have to be the only way there is. There's power in designing a business or your career or your life that honors your brain and your uniqueness instead of shaming it. So the moment you stop trying to do it, quote unquote, normal, and I always say normal isn't necessarily healthy, so dare to be weird, is the moment that traction in life begins. So if this episode has resonated with you, obviously go down the free tool. And if anything else that you want to learn from Skye, unconventionalorganization.com, that's organization with an S, you can dive deeper into her world. She's changing the game for entrepreneurs. And if you're wired a little differently, she might just have something to help set you free. So if you're ready to stop trying to fit in or slam the square peg in the round hole or unlock yourself, reach out to Skye or reach out to Brad and I at Limitless You. Hang on for one more minute. After we say goodbye to Skye, there's a message that we recorded for you to support you in building a life and a business you don't have to escape from. You don't have to wait for the weekend for. Like, you actually love it each and every time. So stick around for the message. Until next time, build your brain with love. Lead with love. And remember, you don't need to do it all. You just need to find your way and take one step at a time. Thank you so much for being here today, Skye.
Yeah, thanks. You're welcome.
Until next time.
Hi, I'm Brad Chandler. For over 20 years, I flipped 4,500 homes, chasing success I thought would bring peace. What I didn't realize was the stress and chaos weren't from my business. They were signals of deeper issues.
And I'm Yvonne. My path was different, but equally eye-opening. I spent years transforming organizations into high-performing powerhouses, yet I neglected my own well-being. When I began uncovering subconscious patterns and listening to my body, everything changed.
That's why we founded Limitless You, to help business owners and executives like you uncover and conquer the subconscious beliefs holding you back. Whether it's the stress of business chaos, overworking, relationship problems, or anxiety and self-doubt, these are signals, indicators of deeper patterns that can be rewired to unlock your full potential.
Imagine building a business that fuels your joy and fulfillment.
If you're ready to stop surviving and start thriving, visit unlocklimitlessyou.com and book a free session.
Let us help you build a life that doesn't just look good, but also feels good.
Hit subscribe if you don't want to miss out on more life-changing content. And if you're struggling, you don't have to. Go to bradchandler.com/contact. There, you can join the Facebook community of like-minded entrepreneurs, and you'll see a button to schedule your freedom and happiness call. See you on the next episode.